Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, reporting on Code Red for Humanity. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, "We know they're lying. They know they are lying. We know that they know they are lying. They know that we know that they know they are lying, and still they continue to lie." This is the top news item on Twitter today. IPCC's climate change report is code red for humanity, says UN Secretary General. Once in 50-year heat waves now happening every decade, UN climate report. And they have a picture of a house burning up. It can get pretty hot inside a house which is on fire. Pretty scary stuff, but it simply isn't true. The National Climate Assessment shows that heat wave length, intensity, and peak temperatures have all plummeted over the last century. The Environmental Protection Agency shows that heat waves were much worse during the 1930s than they have been in recent years. The percentage of the United States which reaches 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius has plummeted over the last 90 years, and this year is at a record low. The frequency of hot days has also plummeted over the last 90 years, with recent years being near a record low. All of the available evidence shows that this claim from the United Nations is completely fraudulent. Here's an article from the New York Times saying a hotter future is certain, and they show a forest fire which can get really hot. So far this year, burn acreage in the United States is near a record low and down more than 90% from the very hot 1930s. Not surprisingly, the record heat and drought of the 1930s was also accompanied by a lot of burn acreage. Antonia wasn't happy about me responding to her with factual data, so she immediately blocked me. Apparently, she prefers pictures of forest fires and solar panels to actual data. The United Nations says it's unequivocal humans are driving worsening climate disasters, but the actual data shows that deaths from natural disasters, including weather, have plummeted over the last century. The United Nations says to save the planet, focus on cutting methane. Methane makes up less than 2 parts per million of the atmosphere and has a residence time of less than 10 years because it quickly oxidizes. Radiative transfer modelers frequently ignore methane because its effect is so small as to be negligible. The attack on methane has nothing to do with climate. It's actually an attack on the meat industry. They're trying to blame the imaginary increase in bad weather and heat waves on the 90 million cattle in the United States. Which is odd because during the Little Ice Age, about 50 to 100 million bison roamed the Great Plains of the United States. Temperatures were very cold back then. According to the United Nations, the chemistry of methane must have changed since the 16th century. The reason we're seeing all of this climate fraud coming from academia is the same reason we're seeing lots of medical fraud. The editor of the New England Journal of Medicine said, "It's simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published, or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines." The editor of The Lancet said, "The case against science is straightforward. Much of the scientific literature, perhaps half, may simply be untrue." Last month, the BMJ Medical Journal asked this question: "Time to assume that health research is fraudulent until proven otherwise?" President Eisenhower explained the problem in his farewell address 60 years ago. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific technological elite. What's happened is that a number of very rich people who want to control the energy supply have corrupted academia and the press. Nothing we're hearing about climate has anything to do with reality. Temperatures today are 0.2 degrees Celsius above the 1979 to 2000 average. There's no indication we're having a climate emergency. There's no indication that humans control the climate, and there's no indications that government controls the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Over the past 30 years, the United Nations has made dozens of climate agreements. None of them have had any impact on the rate of growth of carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere. China continues to build hundreds of new coal-fired power plants while the West shuts down the critical fossil fuel infrastructure it needs to survive. We are watching the planned destruction of civilization. We haven't progressed since the days of the Soviet Union. The difference now is that the lies are much bigger and much more widespread. For the past 13 years, Toto has been pulling back the curtain on what is now called the Great Reset. You can visit him, Kyrie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.